Hey friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, and this is the executive producer, Huck. Yes, Huck L. Berry. I forgot to show this last time and she got really upset, so that's her prima donna shot. We're in her life preserver. She goes, I don't need that life preserver, Dad. You're a good girl. She's a good girl. Got a little warm today. Yeah, got a little warm, huh? You're a good girl. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. And I read up some things. It doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees out or it's 80 degrees. Huck wants to go. And her favorite thing to do is to go out on the trail and her and I take off, go hiking. It's her favorite thing. At a certain time every afternoon, she'll come up and sit and just stare at me. And I know she wants to go on a hike, which is cool. Well, I was reading the other day, and this is for everybody out there who has a dog, that above 85 degrees, you really shouldn't be taking your dog on walks. I didn't really think much about that. But then I read it and I said, this makes some sense. And I've taken Huck on some pretty good hikes at 85 degrees. And when we get back, she's huffing and puffing. And what she does is she comes, sits right over an air conditioning vent. And that's how she cools off. Of course, she gets a big drink of water. Then I started thinking, her hair is already grown way out, as you could see. And I can't get her in for another cut for another 2 or 3 weeks. So anything close to 85, we're not going out. Today it got up to 83. I tried to keep her in the shade as much as I could. And she came in, she's all fine, but I thought the 85 degree marker was interesting. And I'm guessing that humidity would play into that as well. High humidity probably would not be good to take a dog like her out. Luckily for us, we have pretty low humidity here. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about a type of case we don't talk about daily like we do most cases here. But early in my research, I started to see a high number of cases coming out of Wisconsin and other parts of the US that involve water. And the same profile points applied. As an example, a young man was seen at a party. 50 people at the party said, yeah, he was having fun right in the middle of us, and all of a sudden, boom, he was gone. Nobody saw him leave. So the next day they bring a canine to that house, and they can't find a track of him leaving the house. This has happened at many bars. And they search the house, they don't find him. The house is next to a reservoir or a river, and days later the individual's found in a body of water. Under highly unusual circumstances. And that's kind of how I got interested in it. Canines couldn't find a track. And then more intrigue developed when it went to autopsy. So I got really involved in it, and I wrote this book called Missing 411: A Sobering Coincidence. Yeah, it's a word play. 99.5% of everybody that is victimized in this manner was drinking alcohol. The victims were predominantly males, 18 to 40. And no, it did not matter the race. There's Hispanics, blacks, Asians. Kind of I'm going to go through this profile for you. The guys were athletic. They were either in college or recent grads. Athletic meaning I couldn't find anybody who was obese and not in shape. Almost in every incident, they were out with friends. They never were out or left with multiple people or with girlfriends, boyfriends. Now, there have been female victims in these instances. It's not a high percentage at all, but it does happen. Now, when they disappear, nobody observes where these people go. As an example, some of the bars in Wisconsin, you can see the river right out the bar. Nobody sees the people walk out the bar and go to the river. And there's no tracks in the snow going towards the river. Just the facts. Sometimes they leave the establishment, the party, wherever they're at, and they go missing as they're en route home. I'm going to stop here for an instance. I want all the parents out there and any young people that are watching, heed what I'm going to say. If there's one thing you learn from this, you never, ever, ever leave a location after drinking and leave that location alone. Never. I can tell you about hundreds of these cases where the ending is destructive as all heck. So if you're a parent, you just pound it into your daughter or son. I don't mind you going to these parties, to these bars, but you do not leave alone. Do not. And does it matter if they're on the phone with somebody as they're going home so they're not alone? No, it doesn't matter. Because I have cases where they're on the phone and they say, oh my gosh, phone goes dead and they're dead. Yeah, that's right. I have about 2 or 3 of those cases just like that. So just because you're on the phone doesn't mean squat. Now, the bodies are usually found. And if they are found, they're in a body of water. In the hundreds of cases I researched, there's one in this book that's 100% like the profile I'm going to lay out for you. The difference being is that the victim woke up in the river with ice floating by him, alive. The guy was able to get out of the river at a hospital. He was on the bank of the hospital. He was severely hypothermic. He stumbles into the hospital and they saved his life. He doesn't remember leaving the bar. He doesn't remember getting in the river. He doesn't know how he got in the river. He doesn't remember anything. It's the only case like this. Now, again, loss of memory is huge. I've spoken about this hundreds of times because I spent a good portion of my life studying UFO abductees. I always go to that because normally people don't lose their memory. So if a body is found in water, it always goes to autopsy. And in many of the instances I cited, the coroners cannot determine the cause of death. I've spoke to these coroners because they approached me and they said, Dave, we are scientists. This is our expertise, determining the cause of death. And when we can't figure it out, it bothers the heck out of us. One of the biggest jurisdictions in the U.S., their head coroner medical examiner said, Dave, we have meetings with our entire staff talking about this issue. You're talking about something that we know about, but it's not talked about publicly. But we know what's happening. Now, let's talk about the small jurisdictions. A lot of these students, young people, disappear in a small jurisdiction. These small jurisdictions have a problem with saying they don't know. Big jurisdictions don't, because if they get 4 or 5 medical examiners all looking at the same body and all come to the same conclusion, the power of 4 having that opinion is a lot stronger than just 1 in a small city. Unfortunately, that small city, that medical examiner is going to do what a detective in New York City, Gannon, said: local reports for local consumption. Let's soothe the concern. Let's just say died of drowning. There's no obvious cause of death. There's no injury to the body, so there's no beatings. We're not hiding anything, but it's just a drowning, and let it go. Probably happens way more than you ever will know. So in a big jurisdiction, they're going to come out and say they don't know. Small jurisdiction, probably not. Standard autopsy screens for 24 drugs and narcotics. GHB is not one of those drugs. GHB, yeah, they call it the date rape drug. It's one of them. But GHB is made in minute, really minute quantities in the body. I've had other coroners tell me that there's a theory out there that somehow, somewhere, some entity has found the key to turn on that valve and just flood the body with GHB. I thought that was a fantastic theory. That way you don't have to have somebody give it to you. They just know how to turn it on. Fascinating. There are several hundred, maybe thousands of cities in the world that have a college or university that has a lake, pond, river, or creek in, around, or adjacent to the city. I'm going to guess. Maybe thousands. Now here's the point. Not every one of those colleges and universities that have that body of water have these issues that we're talking about. No. It's a select few, and those select few have several. Why would that be? Why would that be? Sometimes cities with a lot of these cases say, oh, they have a serial killer issue. Austin, Texas is saying that right now. Another city that said it a lot was Manchester in the UK. They called their serial killer the Pusher. You see, Manchester has a lot of canals, and the canals are shallow. Many times, the victims are found in a shallow body of water, so shallow they could have stood up and saved themselves, but they didn't, and they drowned. At least that's what it was said, that they drowned. Nobody ever saw anybody pushed in. Nobody's ever saw a fight or a struggle. Just the next morning, the body's in the water. The UK has had several of these cities that have been victimized in this matter. New York City, there was a time, and they may be having it again now, there was a time where they had a lot of these cases. A detective in New York City named Gannon exposed much of this from a local level. He was told that a body went in the water in A and was found upstream in B. Bodies can't float upstream. And then he found bodies that were in the water, or the person disappeared for 10 days. And they find the body, but the coroner says it was only in the water for 3 days, because you can determine how long a body is in water. So where were they for the other days? And there was no injuries to the body. It wasn't a beating, kidnapping, etc. And he developed that term, local reports for local consumption. But Gannon and his team made one mistake. And he's a brilliant detective. I take nothing away from him. But they looked at it from a local issue. A few cities in the US. It's worldwide. And I prove that by showing many cities in other countries that are having the exact same issue. Boston is another city on the East Coast that had several of these cases. Other cities, New Orleans, Phoenix. Phoenix, Dave? Yeah, there's a lake in Phoenix. Had these cases. Vancouver, Canada. Bellingham, Washington. Bellingham? Chicago. Indianapolis. St. Paul. Of course, St. Paul has the Mississippi River running through it. It doesn't matter if it's seawater, freshwater, Great Lakes, ponds. But one of the top locations in North America, the Mississippi River. Why is that? Well, first of all, the Mississippi almost bisects North America. One's almost through the middle of the country. So it covers a lot of area. But why that? Now, friends, there's no evidence that people under the influence magically jump in the river at 3 a.m. There's never any evidence that alcohol does that to you, or that drugs do that to you. Now, there are some drugs that will make the body heat up. As an example, PCP. When I was a policeman, I made dozens of arrests for people under the influence of PCP that were running around naked. When we got a call that somebody was naked, we knew we had to dispatch 4 or 5 officers, because people under the influence of PCP have unbelievable strength. They'll fight you to the death. And the only way you can beat them is through pure body weight, holding them down and getting 3 or 4 people on one arm to get the arm behind them to put handcuffs on. So, but none of these have been PCP. PCP isn't a popular drug anymore. But why did I tell you all this? I'm telling you this because a case just came up in Wisconsin, a state that has a lot of these cases. And I looked into it, and the case bothers me. I'm going to tell you about it. It's a rare case. It involves a young woman, Elliot Heinz, German name. That's Elliot, 22 years old, missing July 20th, 2025 in Lacrosse, Wisconsin. Lacrosse, a city that's had several of these cases in the past. She's last seen wearing a white t-shirt, cut-off denim shorts, and white sneakers. She's originally from Hortonville, Wisconsin. She was a very smart girl. She was a graduate of the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. Now, I always look where people are from, where they've stayed, because I started to believe many years ago that where you're from, where you've lived in the past, has some relevance on what happens to you later in life. I can't understand it, but I can sure show it. So she went to University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, which is on the Wisconsin River, which flows to the Mississippi River. Hold your taters, put that in your brain bank, and hold on to it. Now, on July 20th, she's a grad student at Viterbo University in Lacrosse, And Viterbo is a private Catholic school. Small, 2,100 students. Now, she was in their mental health graduate program for counseling. She was the oldest child in her family, and she had a brother and a sister. Keep this in mind. Elliot was super smart. On July 20th, she went to the Bronco Bar in downtown Lacrosse with friends. Hung out. I'm guessing that she drank, but I have no proof at this point. But at 2:30 a.m., she tells her friends that she's going to leave and walk to her apartment, which is south of the bar and south end of the city. 50 minutes later, and only a half mile away, she's picked up on closed-circuit TVs walking in the right direction of her apartment, adjacent to the Riverfront Marriott. She's alone, and she appears to have her cell phone in her hand. So, this is downtown Lacrosse. She's at Broncos. She's caught walking along the riverfront right here, adjacent to the downtown Marriott. She's got her cell phone in her hand, and she's walking alone. She's not walking like she's drunk. She's walking normal, like she's heading home. Well, the next day in the afternoon, friends and family are trying to contact Elliot. Phone goes like it's dead. No answer. Mom said that she texted Elliot almost every day. They talked on the phone. Good, healthy communication, the way it should be. But her mom said that after multiple times, she knew something was really wrong. She reported Elliot as a missing person to the Lacrosse police. Now, I know you guys think I make this stuff up, but I don't. I swear to you on the Bible, I am telling you the truth. Friends and family described Elliot as one of the most compassionate, nicest people that walked the earth. They said you wouldn't meet anybody nicer or cared more about people than Elliot. I'm not making that up. Well, friends started searching immediately. That on the 20th, later in that day. And surprisingly, they found her phone near the Marriott Hotel. Police started searching the Mississippi River with dive teams and drones. I'm going to get back to the phone in a minute. I think it's important to give you a little bit of background on Lacrosse. At the end of 2006, they had a series of these disappearances. And the University of Wisconsin at Lacrosse launched what was called River Watch. It was a campus project started to eliminate river-related alcohol deaths. Student volunteers would walk the river area wearing reflective vests that identified them, carrying a flashlight, and they would look for lone intoxicated students down by the river, and then they would walk them back to their apartment or get them assistance or get them help. An outstanding program to address the issue of major concern. And it eliminated traveling alone. Remember, point of separation. Elliot left that bar, left her friends, was walking alone. Now, the Lacrosse victims, I'll give you 3 of them. One was a man named Jeff Yeasey, 20 years old. He was eventually found May 20th, 1999, in the river. His blood alcohol level was 0.42. 5 times the legal limit for driving. I don't know how anybody 20 years old could get that much alcohol in the system without passing out. Another one, Jared Dion, 21. He was found April 15th, 2004. His blood alcohol was 0.27. Now this is in their dead bodies. And finally, Luke Holman, 21, was found October 2nd, 2006. His blood alcohol was 0.32. All excessive drinking. Now, Elliot disappeared on July 20th. July 23rd. Police were still searching the Mississippi in Lacrosse. But at 10:15 a.m., 13 to 15 miles downriver from Lacrosse in the city of Brownsville, near the Lawrence Lake Marina, a couple of fishermen see something floating in the river. They get closer to it. It's a body wrapped in duckweed face down. I've stated to you before, normally, on the list of averages, men are found face down, women are found face up. Now, I'm not saying in every case it's women face up, because that's not true. A lot of it's based on body structure. But amazingly, in the vast majority of the cases here that I've talked about in this book, men are found face up, women are found face down. Just giving you the facts, folks. Now, how the river, if the river did manage to wrap her in duckweed, I don't know. Police come by. They recover the body and they confirm it's Elliot. She's deceased. That afternoon, the police make an absolutely idiotic statement. They said they looked at the body and there's no evidence of foul play. You can't tell anything by looking at the body. Unless maybe there's a gunshot wound or there's stab wounds. But do you know if she's ingested any poison? Do you know if anybody poisoned her? You wouldn't know if anybody strangled her either by looking at the body. I just can't believe the statements some police make. But again, I'll go with Gannon. What Gannon said, local reports for local consumption, local statements for local consumptions. Oh, we got to keep the people in Wisconsin calm down because they'll think about all these other deaths we had. Yeah, they better. Well, the body went for autopsy, and the coroner's office did the autopsy. And as of the time I filmed this, they had no release on the cause of death. Now, for them to get blood alcohol and if there was any drugs in her system, etc., that could take 30 days. But an autopsy will show drowning immediately. They don't need to wait. So I don't understand why they're waiting. I want you to remember, friends, bodies don't fly into the river. Elliot isn't walking home and thinking about her first year of graduate school and all of a sudden says, oh, let me jump in this big river, the Mississippi, and go for a midnight swim. No, it doesn't do that. Even if you're highly intoxicated. And I know this may shock some people, but Dave has been highly intoxicated on more than one occasion in his lengthy life. I have never considered jumping into a body of water while I've been intoxicated. No, that never really even crossed my mind. But there's a very important point here. Mega important point. I'll ask you, when Elliot was walking on the Riverwalk and the CCTV shows her with her phone in her hand, what, she's wearing shorts, sneakers, shirt, what was the most important item that she had with her that day? I would conservatively say it was that phone. And for most 22-year-old college attendees, that phone is highly important. Why was that phone on the ground next to the hotel? You think hard about that. Because in a lot of these cases that eventually show no violence to the body, no kidnapping, the assumption is the person jumped in the river and drowned. Why is that phone on the ground? And if for no other reason other than that, which the police knew about the first day she went missing, that they got that phone, why would they say there's no evidence of foul play? Let's play devil's advocate. Let's just pretend that there's a fish real close to the bank of the river and it's coming up at night to feed. It's a ridiculous thing, but just play with me here. And she sees it. And Elliot goes over to the river, looks in, looking at the fish, trips and falls in the water. Okay, even if that was the case, why wouldn't she just pull herself out? Right? But if that was the case, the phone would have been in the river. But no, the phone's way back by the hotel. That's why in my mind, this dog doesn't hunt. Sorry, Huck, I didn't mean to rouse you there. So, that's the case for today. Now, I may be completely wrong. They may find evidence of foul play, but the police already said they didn't. So are the police assuming she dove in for a swim? Is that what they're thinking? Because if that isn't the case, what is the case then? You tell me, police. And then you come back and you tell me how come it's in all these cities all over the world. Why is this happening? Friends, you are greatly appreciated. Thank you for being here. You're very kind. And I appreciate your comments that you make on these videos. This is the kindness revolution, and we have to remember that. And along those lines, to the Heinz family, I realize that really all you know is this case with your daughter. I have great respect for what you're going through. It's a horrible outcome with a great young lady. But there's much more to this than even what the locals are going to tell you. I've sent out dozens of these books to victims' families. I'm glad to send one out to another victim's family. If I was in their position, I'd be so depressed. So depressed. Huck loves you. I'm lucky to have her. Be safe. Be kind. Paulides out.